Hey everyone, today I'm going to go over combat table coverage in Cataclysm. This is an important concept to understand for any prop ally or warrior. The combat table consists of the possible outcomes of an attack, and we're specifically going to just look at this in the context of a mob attacking a player. The possible outcomes of an attack are in this specific order: miss, dodge, parry, block, critical hit, crushing blow, and normal hit. In Wrath, crushing blows were removed from mobs 3 levels higher than the player, which includes boss mobs, so only mobs at least 4 levels higher than the player could crush. Since there are no mobs 4 levels higher than players in endgame, we can remove crushes from this table. We can also remove crits from the table, since every tank in Kata now has a minus 6% chance to be crit talent, so this is what the combat table relevant to us looks like. Each of these values will have a percent chance of happening based on your stats, and the game will go from top to bottom on this list until the outcomes total 100%, and then it will stop, which makes any outcome below that stopping point impossible. Essentially, the game is just going to roll to see what the outcome of an attack is, and you're just dictating what outcome the result of a roll corresponds to based on your stats. For example, if you have 10% miss, 20% dodge, 20% parry, and 50% block, you can think of these as a miss happens if the game rolls a 0.01 to 10, a dodge happens if it rolls a 10.01 to 30, a parry happens if it rolls a 30.01 to 50, and a block happens if it rolls a 50.01 to 100. When we talk about combat table coverage, we're talking about the total percent chance of getting either a miss, dodge, parry, or block. So when we say full combat table coverage, this just means you have a 100% chance to get a miss, dodge, parry, or block after reductions from diminishing returns and level difference between you and the mob. At this point, you've completely filled out your combat table with avoidance or block outcomes, pushing worse outcomes, normal hits in this case, off the table. You'll often see combat table coverage abbreviated as CTC, and that's how I will refer to it for the rest of the video. Since dodge and parry have diminishing returns that aren't shown in the in-game character sheet, it's much easier to use a WeakAuras or a set building website that will do the math for you. Once these tools become available for Cataclysm, I'll add them to the video description. Blocks now reduce damage taken by 30% by default, and 31% if you have the meta gem, so our goal in Cataclysm as block tanks is to make the worst outcome of an attack against us a block for 31% reduced damage. Prop values can also increase this damage reduction to 51% with block meta if Holy Shield is active, and prop warriors have a chance to get a critical block, which reduces damage taken by 62% with the block meta. Crit blocks are a separate secondary roll that only occur if the initial roll for the incoming hit was a block, so crit blocks do not add to CTC. They just amplify the damage reduction of a roll that was already decided to be a block. Since we get such a huge amount of damage reduction from getting a block, we want to completely remove normal hits from our combat table by reaching 100% of outcomes before the table gets to normal hits. It must be noted that mobs will reduce your chance to get a miss, dodge, parry, and block by 0.2% each, or 0.8% CTC total, for every level they have above you. Since boss mobs are considered 3 levels above player level, they will reduce players' CTC by a total of 2.4%. Meaning you need 102.4% CTC to actually hit 100% CTC after the 2.4% reduction. Once our miss, dodge, parry, and block are added up, our chance to take a normal hit will be whatever amount it takes to get the total outcomes to 100% if the total outcomes does not reach 100% with those 4 things added together. Let's look at some example numbers. Let's say after the 2.4% total boss reduction, we had 10% miss, 20% dodge, 20% parry, and 40% block for 90% CTC. Our table would look like this. Since we didn't reach 100% before the table got to normal hits, our chance to take a normal hit was 100% minus miss, minus dodge, minus parry, minus block. This left a 10% chance to take a normal hit. Now let's say everything stayed the same except we got our block up to 50%. Our table would look like this. Note that our chance to take a normal hit is now 0% because our combination of miss, dodge, parry, and block outcomes totaled 100% before normal hits were reached on the combat table. Let's keep everything the same but bump our block chance all the way up to 100%. Our table would still look exactly the same. Note that all of the block we added after we had already reached 100% CTC did nothing at all, since block is our lowest outcome on the combat table and anything above it takes priority. Even though we added plus 50% block to our stats, nothing actually changed. This is important to keep in mind because you'll often have the choice to convert some of the stats taking you over cap to something else. Alright, so I know that was a lot. Let's recap everything really quick. The game will go from top to bottom on the combat table until the outcomes total 100%. By reaching full combat table coverage, we can guarantee that we never take a normal hit, and our worst outcome is a blocked hit. 102.4 CTC is the number you're aiming for after dodge and parry diminishing returns, but before the 2.4% CTC reduction from bosses. And 100% CTC is the number after considering all reductions. If you want to support me, you can help me out by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.